Hello, everyone, and welcome to the very first Imizizi conversation in 2024. Exciting times ahead as we are doing things completely different from last year. So, this year we have focus themes where we'll be discussing different topics, focused per quarter, as well as you, as our followers, gets to be part of the conversations. So, if you would like to take part, please do send us an email info@imizizi.co.za. And do follow us as well. We are on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, as well as Instagram. And I'm not alone. Today, I have beautiful guests, powerful people who've been in this space and understand this topic, and we're going to be sharing our insights and opinions with them. Again, my name is Yolisa Chabalala. I'm a co-founder and director at Imizizi. I will let my guests introduce themselves, starting on my left.
Thank you.
Tabo.
Hi there. So my name is Thabo Nyaku, and I am the IT lead for the IT service desk at the BMW IT Hub, specifically for the German Control Center. So I've been in IT now for 5 years, but before that, I was a digital marketing strategist and a content creator, and then also a team lead at Bounce Inc. And I'm just here to share my story and things from my perspective as a young person working in IT.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you so much for that intro, Mr. Chris. If you can introduce yourself as well.
Thank you, Yoli. I'm Christopher Hlekani. I'm a chemist by trade. My experience spans from FMCG to infrastructure to different entrepreneurial aspects of businesses. I have since left corporate, and I'm now on my own and encouraging people to learn, at the same time developing businesses.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you so much for that intro. Anya, over to you.
Thanks, Yolisa. My name's Anya Armstrong. I work for Imizizi as a strategic lead. I've got about 20 years of experience in the people space. My passion is people. I love to see people grow and develop. I love the outcome that it produces, and I'm incredibly interested in this topic. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So I'm so excited today because, as you've heard, I'm surrounded by power. All around, people who are in the space of scarce skills, other people are doing their own thing, leading organizations, and we also have our very own strategic lead on people management who's going to be sharing her insights in this field as well. So without any further ado, our topic for today is scarce skills. And that's what I'm calling it, a global skills pandemic, because it's not only affecting South Africa, but I can tell you as a recruitment agency as well, we are seeing this globally. And as much as today we are going to be focusing a lot more on scarcity of IT skills, but we do know that there is a scarcity of skills right through, right? And what government does is that they release a list every single year for scarce skills, and that's gazetted. And the latest one was issued in October last year. And they speak of skills around engineering, around IT, obviously, business development. I was actually quite surprised to see sales there, business development, forming part of the list. And the list goes on and on. We have more than 100 skills that are scarce, But the interesting thing is that in South Africa specifically, we have such a high unemployment rate. And my heart breaks when I think about the stats, to be honest, especially from a youth perspective, because the stats out there, I think it was as at December last year, if I stand to be corrected, but it's sitting at around 4.7 million youth unemployed in South Africa today. It almost sounds like an oxymoron, right? Yeah. That scarcity of skills on the one side, and on the other side, we have high unemployment rates. So there's something that we are not doing right. right? As a country, there's something that we are not doing right with the education system. There's something that we're not doing right as corporates, right? Because clearly we are not feeding the right skills into the system, because it's all about that. And today we're going to be talking a lot more about also, how do you get into these spaces? What are these spaces, and what are people doing about it? What can we do about it, with you sitting at home, whether you are a CEO of an organization, or you are leading people management in an organization, or you are a hiring manager facing, the scarce skills. This is affecting everybody globally, right? And it's also affecting our economy at the end of the day, because where there's scarcity of skills and we are not filling them up, there's low productivity in the ecosystem. So without speaking too much, let me start by getting the views from Chris, around, what's your opinion of how did we get here? Because I was looking at the stats as to where, I think about 2001, the average for unemployment was sitting at around 27%. And it's skyrocketed since then, right? According to your opinion, what are some of the causes for this?
Yuli, I'll pick a few. Obviously, I'll not cover every one of the aspect, but I do believe that the first appreciation which needs to come through is that it's about supply and demand. If the balance is incorrect, we'll never get to an equilibrium where we have zero unemployment.
That's right.
So to speak. But fundamentally, we will always have that anomaly where the skills which are produced by the country or institutions of learning are not necessarily what are in demand. The first question we ask ourselves is, how do we transition? Do we have institutions which understand the migration of those who have ability to learn and help them transition to the skills required? That's very fundamental. But secondly, as a country, we need to begin to create new economies or new environments for empowerment. Let's take a very simple example. Do you believe that South Africa, we have a data of the whole land such that if we did locate a point somewhere in the country, we can pinpoint and say, this is the place and the access, and this piece of land here has this rainfall forecast, has got this type of soil, has this type of kind of products which can be grown there. If we understand that asset, country or soil or land, we'll then realize that the ability to create employment starts from understanding. Now it generates new skills. You have to have people who fly drones to map the country and code and analyze and do all those kind of things. The question is, are we understanding that imbalance? Are we creating the demand and supply appropriately? Are we identifying those abilities which can be the way to transition?
Yeah.
For me, that's the shift. Once we understand that shift, we will be able to do that. The alternative is to outsource. And the challenge with outsourcing is that we take away the jobs which we could have actually created inside of.
That's a very, very powerful point. I see you nodding a lot.
I completely agree. I was just going to say, from a sort of a corporate perspective, and that sort of leads up to it, the challenges that they are facing. You've got this problem with economic growth. So the rest of the world is streaming ahead. We've got a skills gap, so especially in the tech space. So it reduces our competitive advantage, Then I loved what you said about the imbalance in supply and demand. We've got this enormous unemployment rate, and then we've got an immense shortage of the skills that we require. So where are we going to get them from? So we have needs that can't be met, and then we have unemployment. So we've got mouths that can't be fed. So there's an enormous mismatch. And then on top of that, there's there's a digital divide. So within the country, we've got the people who have access and who can innovate and who can develop and become efficient. But then we've got a large amount of people who do not have access. So it's further creating the divide in the country. And I think that that's also something it's the result of perhaps not understanding our land.
Could it be that sometimes we overthink the ability of tech, connectivity, and adoption of mobile tech?
Yeah.
I mean, every second person in South Africa have a smartphone.
Absolutely.
Assuming that's the case, we are increasingly become better covered from a connectivity point of view. Does it mean that a tech person, well trained, can sit under a tree in Kurulane, where I come from, and order something on Amazon and it get delivered? Or sit down out there, get a brief from APSA, code, and be paid. For that matter, code for Amazon and be paid in dollars. So there is a shift in the way we look at the industries, tech in particular, but also how we begin to understand how we fund that training.
Yeah.
So there is some point where government and the demand in what we do needs to align in order for us to see that less and less happening. How much that NSF collects for levies? How does that, if it was to be translated into specific targeted skills, rural inclusively, will keep people earning dollars under a tree in my rural village coding? My institution, which I represent, did a study, took people from the most disadvantaged and took them through the programs. The people who topped the ladder in terms of capacity and skill when people coming from affluent spaces.
Wow.
They were coming from the rural.
Wow.
So there is talent. Talent represents ability to deliver. In that way, begin to erode the challenge which we have in terms of skills.
Yeah. And I think I can identify with what you're saying most definitely, because I always go back to myself. So I'm from Mthatha in the Eastern Cape, right? Not affluent at all, right? And here I am today leading an organization. There is so much untapped potential out there. But like you were saying, that it requires a different mindset, because government and corporates, we sort of stop ourselves from doing a lot more in those spaces because we judge even before doing the research, because data should be driving. I like what you said before, to say that there should be data that tells us what is in this area, right? What skills is there? What land do we have, and what can be done in that area? Because that's an asset on its own, right? And you yourself, I think you made reference that you're from an environment that's not affluent as well, right? But here you are today, and these are real stories of people who've made it from those areas, and the concentration of unemployment is in those areas, unfortunately, in South Africa. And we have Mr. Thabo over here. So Thabo, I would like for you to just share your story, about how you ended up in IT, because we're talking about Scarce Skills, IT, and I think the other interesting thing that I would like to mention, I'm hoping that you share your story around that, which is quite rare, is that you are a German speaker. That's correct. Right? That's very interesting. So just share your story around that.
So with regards to my story, is I went to the German school in Johannesburg. So my foster father, he was from Germany, and he raised me like his son, and that's where I learned to speak German, and also went to the German school, and thereby also completed what they call the Deutsche Sprachdiplom. So it's a certificate of your German proficiency. So with that, it gave me the opportunity to either study in Germany or choose to study in South Africa, but I chose to stay in South Africa after my father's passing. And then I ended up working at Bounce, which is a trampoline park. So I worked there as a host, and that was my first actual job. Started working as a host, and then from a host, I was given opportunity then to become a team lead, which is like a team lead for the venue. But that was also only through the possibility from the owners of the company, because they fostered growth within our team. And then when an opportunity arose for me to then become the digital marketing and content manager, that was also again through their support, even though I had no education in that field. What they did is that they invested in my skills, they invested in training to get me to a level where I could do the job and also excel at the job, and also
Yeah.
supported me.
Yeah.
So to one point where you guys mentioned where you said that decisions, yes, to one degree, they have to be data driven, but there's also human components to that as well, where we will see the abilities of people who on paper might not seem like they have that certain skill set within them with that capability. Most people, given the opportunity, they do have the capability to achieve a lot of things. And then with my skill, so to say, in this regards, is because of German, there was a demand for German-speaking people to work at the IT service desk for BMW. So given that opportunity, I did apply for the job, got support from my bosses as well. They told me to apply for it. They supported my growth. That's the biggest thing that they wanted to do with the company, is allow people to grow and step into other opportunities that arose for them. Interview, I was very scared about that because we're going to go interview now for an IT hub for one of the biggest car manufacturers. I did not have any IT skills besides the basic things that I taught myself, like how to use a computer or basic commands, but went into the interview. And again, from the BMW standpoint, they were open and they were willing to train, provide the education that was necessary for me to perform in that role. And that was 5 years ago as a IT service desk agent. And today I'm the team lead for the German control center.
That is
and my
amazing.
team, we provide 24-hour production support for all global German plants.
That is amazing. And just out of interest, you mentioned that you decided to stay in South Africa, which means you had the option to go elsewhere. And your skills that you have, right, could have gone out of the country. Just out of interest, why did you decide to stay?
I wanted to stay because for me, South Africa is my home and I love the country. There's so much potential in the country as well. And also going to the German school, I realized that I had an ability of learning another language as well, which could have been a benefit to me in South Africa compared to Germany.
Yeah, yeah.
So in South Africa, we have a very large German community as well. So we have multiple international German schools. We have a lot of German expats and a lot of German families over here. So for me, that was an opportunity where I think my skills could be more harnessed in South Africa as well.
Spot on. And there's something that you mentioned about, that someone took the liberty to actually invest in your training. And I think that is so key. Someone needs to invest in training in order to shift the needle. In order to transform, we need to start investing. Onya, with your experience in corporate, right? Do you think corporate is doing enough? What are some of the challenges that are preventing even corporates, right, from investing? Because we look at government, yes, but at the same time, the economy, a huge part of it, right, is run by it's reliant on the corporate world and entrepreneurship as well. So in your opinion, is corporate doing enough? And also, what are some of the challenges and frustrations that you're experiencing in corporate from investing?
It's hard to answer if they're doing enough. It's, I suppose, each corporate is in it for the bottom line, and the problem with corporate as opposed to government is that it's a profit machine. So they don't always see the return of their investment. I think the main issues that corporates are facing is there's huge frustration about the skills shortage. So there's this continuous searching, especially for tech talent. It's very expensive. It's very time consuming. There's a very competitive hiring landscape. So we're competing with companies locally and internationally. It's driving the salaries up. So it's expensive. Then the cost of the product for the customer increases. So there's a lot of knock-on effects. Then the other thing is when you get your talent, it's very difficult to keep your talent. So now you start investing, and the talent becomes more marketable, allowing then to now move to another business with a higher salary. And so this war for talent begins. And then obviously another impact is, with vacancies. Projects come to a standstill, efficiencies don't move fast enough, your competitive advantage slows down. So there's a lot of issues about the talent shortage. So I think what corporates are currently doing, so if we split it into two categories, what's happening now, and perhaps what can we do if we mobilize ourselves a little bit more? So there is the investment in training and development, that continuous upskilling of IT people in a corporate, but also searching for talent in other areas of the business. And I think, like Thabo said, like you can start in marketing, but you could have the passion and the skill set and the talent to go into tech. Yeah. So corporates need to mine their talent pool that they have because they are tried and tested. It's the known. Just because you haven't done it doesn't mean you can't do it. And then there's a lot of partnerships going on with educational institutions. So corporate, especially large corporates with a lot of influence, they can partner with the techs and the universities and influence the curriculum. So we have a great shortage in this area. So can we please, change the curriculum so that we can actually address the skills gap? We don't always have to take what we get. We can ask for what we want, as a country. And then the other thing is, I think a lot of corporates are now embracing remote working, hybrid working. You don't need to come in. You can sit in Germany, you can sit in Japan, you can sit at home, you can sit in Cape Town. And that's how we can access a greater talent pool. Yeah. Without having to just look locally within your community. And then I think the other thing that's quite important that corporates are doing is there's a lot of investment going into SMEs, so the small startup companies. Obviously, it's got a positive impact on the scorecard, but also if corporates are investing in small startup companies, for instance, tech ones, then they may be able to benefit from the people who come out from them. So it's a nice place to put your investment. So that's what's currently happening. It's not working fast enough.
Could I hook on to some of your comments? And let me be bold and say, having run a group, post office, having been involved in airports, both South Africa and Brazil and India, there are few things which I think corporates then and now should probably be thinking harder on. One is agility. Yeah. How do we understand skilling in an agile way? Yeah. Because if we still go back traditionally, we will always take 3 years to produce a skill set. We'll never catch up. Because for what it's worth, try and look at the evolution of a mobile phone. Probably me and you, when we started with a Nokia, it flipped. Between then and now, it was a hockey stick change. Yeah. So agility to adapt what is happening in our environment is key. 100%. It also then means that the level of how agile we are in looking at the appropriate methods, which not only got tenure, but look at acquired skill to apply yourself. Yes. Proficiency may be the answer. And recruiters aligned, it's understanding how we begin to identify that as a matrix which, when we begin to look at acquiring people and acquiring skills, we begin to influence the employer to understand, because it's fundamental. Yeah. Yeah. Having said so, we less and less baseline our institutional base, our asset, our employees, to a point where we can find at Thabo that Thabo works in HR, he's not blemished to HR, he can actually move to IT because we understand his competence. So if you pick up what I'm trying to 100%. Bring forward, Because unless we begin to look at this minor nuances in the chain of upskilling people, getting people in on board, reducing unemployment, we will never get to do anything more productive. I did some baseline check in the IT skills in 2022. Believe you me, at least 90,000 jobs were outsourced out of South Africa, which represent anything to 9 billion rand in the economy. The question is, do we do it because it's easier as organization, because project will fail? Or do we begin to look at agility in transforming our skill sets? So there is space to create employment.
Yeah.
There is demand. Back to my supply and demand aspect, there is demand. How do we understand the machinery which convert the product person to be applied in the workspace? That's what has to be the focal point.
That is so relevant, because I think that there's a history of bias towards formal qualifications. There's so much untapped talent in this country, but they haven't had access to education. So, I mean, there's ways and means that corporates or anyone can tap into the right skill, the passion, the agility to learn. You don't necessarily need to have a certificate. You need to have an attitude, you need to have an ability, and you need to have skills. Anyone is developable, but we need to find them. So if we could tap into the talent that we haven't tapped into previously, the massive unemployment rate, there's no difference in intelligence. Because you have a piece of paper. And I think that we're thinking of it wrong. We're saying we need X, we need Y, we need this experience, we need this qualification, we need Y. Why do we? Why do we?
But there's a shift coming along, which I've noticed as well, as like a younger person who's going through the current crisis, I'll be honest, for young people to find employment, not just in South Africa, but globally as well. And we have seen a shift now with a lot of big companies where they are putting away with the requirement for a formal education. And they're starting to transition into what skills people have in terms of how they can be assets as well to their organizations. But also a big thing with regards to that is accessibility. For a lot of people, in order to learn these skills, is to a degree still a factor. I think it was in 2011 when the ministry reported that they had about a 21% internet penetration throughout the country, and that rose only in 2022 to about 79%. That means about 20% had no internet or connectivity penetration. And that was in 2022. That's not so long ago. And that means we are already on a back foot for a lot of people who have just been able to connect to the internet and actually begin to use the internet as a resource. Because the internet is the biggest resource. I say the University of YouTube is one of the most leading places to know any skill, to upskill yourself, to learn something completely new. And you get so many other benefits such as Udemy or like Code Academy, where you can learn all these different assets and skills that you can apply to what you're doing now in your current job, to level yourself up, progress yourself up, or even look at potential career paths, or just to make yourself as an attractive individual in the IT sphere. And the thing about IT as well is that I feel like a lot of people get scared with IT because they think IT is just a bunch of coding sitting behind a computer and that's it, whereas IT in itself has many applications across many different industries. So IT does not mean you have to be a person who knows how to do coding and that's all you do. You can implement IT in many different facets, from processes to auditing to seeing how you can just make things better in different aspects of a business. So IT is a massive, massive landscape in its own right.
And you sort of in the customer service space within IT.
Exactly.
Right? And there's sales within IT. We can go on and on. There's project management, right? There's a lot of skills. And I think that's a very good point to make for people who are sitting there at home, right? And they're saying that maybe I have a qualification. I don't know which direction to take. Just to say that in IT or any of the scarce skills, do your research. Do research, everybody. Where are the scarce skills? Because there is a problem that everybody is facing. Instead of sitting at home and doing the same thing over and over again, do something different. Before I move from that point, Tabo, just if you can elaborate from a training perspective, because we're speaking about training being done differently. I'm going to come to Chris on that as well shortly. If you can just advise people at home within IT, obviously, because you have experience in that, where can someone go? What are some of the institutions where they can go on the internet? Again, it's accessible on the internet for anybody, and also the cost implications, because I think other people just think, if I am to go through training, it's going to require an exorbitant amount, right? If you can just share from your experience.
So there are many places that you can get training online. So for one, as an example, I used Code Academy. So Code Academy can help you with deciding what you're going to do in terms of career paths, because they give you all the requirements that you do for a career in a certain aspect, and they also do provide you with recognized formal certificates for that. But then you can, as I said, go through Udemy as well. Udemy has a lot of courses where they can teach you what to do, and Udemy always has sales. So a course, let's say the introduction to Python, if you want to do like anything in terms of research or data research, you'd find they have a full course which is at a 90% discount. So the discounts are there as well. I'm not going to say that it's inexpensive, to be very honest, because some courses are expensive. Like we had to do like our ITIL course. So my ITIL foundation course, it is expensive, but for what I do, it is a necessity. So there are many different aspects that you can go through as well. So it's not expensive, but if you have the ability to put some money behind it and to acquire these courses, it will be very beneficial.
Yeah. And I think just to add a little bit on Udemy, more especially because I use Udemy a lot, and I also encourage a lot of people to use it because I've found it to be cost friendly compared to the other ones. You can find courses for as little as 200 rands. If you want to have basics on project management or basics on how to code, or just to understand the fundamentals or the basics, right? You don't have to sit and not have a base, because the competition is just, it's too much. There's an influx of people who are looking for the same job. So you have to think about, how do you differentiate yourself? How do you make your profile to be different from the rest? And also, instead of sitting at home, online, there's a lot of platforms where people can go in, they can form part of projects. And as part of those projects, you are delivering with experienced people. And that also adds to your profile, right? And already that experience, little as it may be, you'll come up on top, because when we recruit, those are some of the things that we are looking for. And best believe that even at entry level, I get these questions quite a lot, where there's a lot of frustration and everybody's like, but I'm a graduate. Why do you expect me to have experience? I'm applying here because, I'm looking for the experience. But the reality is that the competition is just so tough, right? And everybody is looking for the same job. So you have to make sure that you come up on top. And it's the little things that count.
I'm wondering, as I'm listening to Tawa and I'm listening to yourself, just a thought, and I am wearing my corporate hat. It is commendable for the effort you have made to go through, look for programs to do, and advance your learning, which is foundational. You have to learn every day. But organizations tend to focus on proficiency. Now, probably the biggest gap for organizations such as yourself is to begin to look at a measure which does not say experience, but says proficiency.
Proficiency, that's right.
I'm wondering, in your recruitment skills, how much you search for individuals for a specific job and you weigh experience versus
Proficiency. Yeah.
Because experience has got its benefits, but its risks. The risks include 1 year times 20 years of experience. I've got 20-year experience, but it's times one. It's the same thing over 20 times. Vis-a-vis proficiency measures your ability to deliver. It brings me to a point where I would imagine that if I was to set up a program for an institution which could be BMW, how much do we, when we recruit, set up a recruitment program which focuses on proficiency? A balance between what you have gathered over time, which is experience, and ability to deliver the job you're at becomes critical. Why? Because jobs are changing. Yesterday, a combustion engine car mechanic may not be the same as the electric vehicle mechanic. So that level of agility and understanding of adaptation to get the right people will probably dent that aspect experience.
Yeah.
Because I get into a job and I do the job, would you question whether I've got experience or not if I do the job and do the job correctly? No. So it's interesting to probably hear from a youth whether, Tabo, you find that being able to do the job was as challenging as the experience when you were looking for the job or when you were interacting with the current employer or any other, or as youth in general. What is that struggle? Because that struggle begins to address the issues we have to, because that's what the unemployed are facing. That are the things we need to condition ourselves to begin to do. And that dynamic is what I think, from a practitioner point of view, you need to help us. As I said, I'm wearing a corporate hat.
Yeah.
I completely agree. And as you said, from a youth point of view, I think the biggest hindrance or like the biggest obstacle that we are facing is that big keyword that's always there, experience. Entry-level job, 5 years experience somehow. Or you've a graduate, you've studied towards doing this particular thing, experience is required, but it's never even given opportunity just to show your proficiency at it or how well you can do it. And as you said, the landscape is always ever evolving, ever changing. And with so many different technologies coming around now, let's say example like ChatGPT or like Copilot, which are launched where let's say 10 years ago, you need to have a high level of proficiency in certain applications and tools, but now we have tools that can assist us, that's not even a factor anymore. And then we can actually be proficient in what the actual deliverables are of the job. So I feel like it has to be a shift as well from the company recruiting side as well to see what is the actual real need. What is the value that we want out of a person and an individual?
You know, that
Could it be emotional intelligence, that which we measure, coupled with all the complementary capabilities? I don't know. But this is the agility for organization. We have to become agile in understanding how we acquire these skills, how we measure the fit for what we're looking for.
there's it's almost like we keep doing it because we've always done it, but we're not asking ourselves, why are we recruiting on this basis? You know, it isn't fit for purpose any longer. You know, so I completely agree. We're looking for agility, we're looking for ability to learn, we're looking for potential. And then when you're in the organization, we've got to continuously develop you, because the tech space, for instance, it's going to change faster than universities or institutions can keep up with. So it's like gamification, micro-learning, you know, continuous upgrading of people. Then there's like, now you're saying ChatGPT and AI. So there's AI matching tools. So we're not looking for qualifications. We're looking for skill sets. We're looking for preferences. We're looking for, you know, agility, learning agility. And then we match the people to the job. It's got nothing to do with how long you've done it or what piece of paper you have. And that's how you can reach maybe the underrepresented communities as well. Once you've done that, we can offer remote learnerships. Somebody could sit in an informal settlement and do a learnership on IT from the comfort of their own home, you know, at no expense except data, you know. Also, again, partnering with institutions, bringing them into the company, allowing them to learn through experience. And then, yeah, the other thing was obviously the crowdsourcing. So, you know, you match the need with the demand. Is there a place that you can go where you can find what you want and the candidate can find what they want? Yeah. It doesn't have to be long term, it can be short term. I've also heard of something called like a corporate boot camp. So you can take graduates or people with proficiency or people with talent, and it's an intense training. You know, it's high intensity and it prepares you for the workplace. And it's fast paced. There are so many solutions out there, but it's about mobilizing them. It's about investing in them. Yeah. And it's also about saying goodbye to the old ways of doing things, which is exactly what the Scarce Skills is asking for. It's asking for innovation. It's asking for creativity. If we don't harness this stuff, we will be left behind. Yeah. Our profits will decline, the economy will decline, and the match, because everyone has the same problem. I don't have a job, and the corporate is saying, I don't have a person. So how... We've got all the ingredients. Yeah. We just need to match it.
And I just want to go back to the question that you asked as well, especially from a recruitment agency perspective. I mean, we see this all the time, whereby we have a lot of organizations that we support, you know, in the recruitment cycle. And there's almost, I go back again to mindset shift, right? Where it's all about, I have a specification. That specification was probably drafted 5 years ago. It's the same spec. I know I might have an idea as to what I need in the future, but there's almost rigidness that we are finding in corporates at times, whereby they're not flexible enough to say, okay, there's scarcity of skills. Maybe let's think about it differently, because to your point on proficiencies, where you challenge the organization to say that since we have scarcity of skills, we're just not filling these roles. How about we take a different approach, right? Let's look at whether it's people within your organizations, how about we upskill them, because they already have the acumen, they already have, you know, the IT wiring in terms, the cultural fit, they've got that IP from an organization perspective, but that refusal to invest is where we find challenges. And it's almost as if there's also this urgency to fill roles, right? We just want to hire. I think also managers or leaders in corporates don't take the time out to, you know, zoom out. What is the strategy, right? What is it that we are chasing? Let's look at the future. What is it that is required for organization, right, in the future? And I know that's something that you're very passionate about. Chris, that's something that you are very passionate about, because you're not just about filling the skill, right? That you need a Java developer or you need a project manager, but let's look at your entire organization, let's look at your entire team, right? And the future. I would like for you to share around that, your approach, because it's quite interesting, and I think it's about time that we challenge organizations, because we'll be in this loop for as long as we are not changing our mindset. I was reading the other day, I can't remember the country, I was trying to remember the country, but there's a country somewhere, I won't even mention the continent in case I'm wrong, but they position themselves, right, to be number one in sport. I think it was hockey, right? And they invested in it for years, because that's one thing that everyone needs to realize, that it won't take one day to see the ROI. I think I heard you mentioning the ROI there, Anya, and that's something that managers, they're chasing, you know, their KPIs. They are being measured on these things. So they're not going to look at anything outside of those KPIs. So also, yeah, so that's another thing as corporates, are we measuring the right things, right, for our managers? Because in order to drive a certain outcome, You need to start aligning your strategy with the right measurements all the way top down. Otherwise, you will have hiring managers hiring wrong and not making the right decisions because it's coming from the top. Please share your.
Allow me to say something beforehand. I'm not so sure, coming from a rural environment like myself, how many families where there was a mechanic as a father, and consequently there are two mechanics as children. It says to me that something can be learned, taught, transferred.
Transferred, yeah.
So if that be the case, corporate shouldn't be too scared, because there's proof that independent of the fact that you have pre-accessed that this person can be a mechanic, there was a level of mechanic.
Yeah.
What drove that interest? The fact that my father mechanics and I love to mechanic, it draws my inclination to want to understand.
Yeah.
So corporates probably have a number of people who have interest to do certain things, but never given an opportunity, their inclination to the interest being developed into a capability stops.
Yeah.
I do what I have to do every day.
Yeah.
And as a scientist, my urge to be involved in skills transfer, skills training was born out of that. And hence the institution I'm representing in this particular conversation.
Yeah.
Because I identify with the way the core development is made, which links, number one, the strategy of the organization. You don't train in silos, you train for strategy. Because if I have a journey map of where I'm going, and I know what in 2030 the profile of our employees will look like, I can't train in isolation to the strategy.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing which attracted me to this journey. Secondly, you can't measure each person the same way. You can't say because Chris takes 3 years to acquire the skills, Yoli will take 3 years to do the same thing. You have to look at the capacity and capability and look at their training aligned to their journey of acquiring the skill.
Yeah.
So what will have been 3 years in generic, some people will come out in 1 year, some people will come out in 2 years, some people will come in 3 years. So it doesn't take away that hat of it's a 3-year journey which institutions seem to. This is a second bit which I believe strongly what attracted me to skills training and development was all about. Thirdly, is that if you are able to get those, the interest in, their line of capability and capacity, and then you apply the learning, becomes very important, because then you test your learning as you go along.
Yeah.
What our institution focus on, you do a number of blocks, you do an applied program in your applied environment
Yeah.
to show proficiency. When you finish, you have gathered not only out of your interest, but of your skilling into the job. And if I then say, what are you going to do tomorrow? I will tell you. So that's the really part of training which I believe we should be focusing on. Named differently, it should be transitional training, because it's about moving from one level to another. Gathered in that journey, your skills, your application, your interest, because what is that which makes a very productive employee? Happiness. You can give me any metrics.
Yeah.
Happiness is the best measure of what an employee. If an employee is happy, they will do wonders for you.
Yeah.
That's now you've just hit something. It's that's so important, because most managers say, I don't want it. It's so frustrating because every time I get someone in, they leave. So I'm not going to invest. I'm not going to invest because I've got a KPI, I've got a budget. I've basically become the university of IT skills for other companies to poach my people from. But they don't look at the human element. Well, what would make a person stay?
Yeah.
And and it's what you're saying, it's happiness. There are three elements. There's psychological safety, which means do I share the same values? Do I trust my business? Can I be my authentic self at work? Do I have a purpose? What is the purpose? How do I fit into this long-term strategy? And am I important? Is my role important? And then the third one is, am I going to grow? Am I going to develop? If you provide these things, it creates happiness. And then it's a lot harder for somebody to poach you because you're getting what you need where you are. You've got a future, you've got future earning potential. You know, you've maybe got flexibility, there's a lot of elements in it, but I think corporates, they neglect the human people relationship element. And that's maybe why the investment isn't having a return.
Yeah.
Back to Yoli, sorry, Tao. We battle to think about the fact that there may not be opportunity for employment or being employed. We did a study last year, and obviously did some actual view of what 2030 will look like for South African tech skills. Tech skills in South Africa can create up to 4 million jobs by 2030. What does that tell us? It is saying to us we have to invest in understanding our environment
Yeah.
a lot more together with our partners, your partners in companies,
Yeah.
to identify these gaps and create a better communication approach, increasing from the gazetted skills. Because the gazetted skills, for me, help us to identify what's in need, but it's not very much aligned to, by the way, what will be the profile of that in ABSA. Do I have that ability to get closer to that organization?
Yeah.
To me, that's where the disconnect might be, but where the link to this high demand is. Otherwise, the companies will just go and import elsewhere.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Because as you said as well, with regards to the gazetted skills, I think a big thing that's also been happening for a long time is that the gazetted skills are always been for a fix that is now, and not really, in my own opinion, planning for the needs that will be in the future. It's always a interim, now next 5 to 10 years, we're going to need these sort of skills. But what we're actually going to need now, let's say in 25 years, for the next generation that's going to come along. And I think that's where the foresight and future planning will have to take a serious amount of effort as well, because the projected jobs in tech, are they going to be now for South Africa, or are they going to be for other countries to use those skills that we'll be creating then? And it's going to be reinvested in back into South Africa.
You're so correct. I know this question or comment might be a little bit too much, but if it's correctly, you can reflect on it. When do you believe, or in the passages of BMW, when do you believe we will phase out the combustion engine cars? Because phase out the combustion engine cars. Because the reality of it is that if that's going to be phased out in 2030, we cannot be aligning scarce skills to combustion engine mechanic. Because in 2030, it will be a dinosaur.
But then I'll say this now, not as a representative of BMW, but as a car and motor enthusiast myself, is that I don't think they'll ever be phased out in terms of supply and demand, as we always speak about. There'll always be a demand for combustion engines in the greater world region, and not everyone has the affordability to run on electric cars. So there'll always be a demand for skilled people, mechanics, who work with combustion engines, and that skill, which I think should also still be looked up upon, because I feel like a lot of people tend now to look down on certain skills and trades as well, but they have high value and will still continue to have value in many other aspects.
Actually, that's exactly the dilemma of companies. It's not about that. It's about understanding that you have a need for a core skill. So combustion engine car mechanic have foundational skill, which is relevant in electric vehicle cars. How do you transition strategically as you progress? Because that's what keeps people employed. It's that understanding of the capability of the world changing and adapting to it.
Well, I'll still say adapting to it, but also still keeping the experience of what has been as well. like for me, it's like with regards to, let's say, our skill and brain drain. We have a lot of high skilled people who are unfortunately leaving the country. And therefore, a lot of people are coming into different positions and different organizations. We lose that experience that was once there because now we're busy filling a void that was left. And we come in, I say, every single time with slightly less experience, if I'm being very honest with myself. And I think it'd be beneficial for the future and just for the recruitment and just for the development of we could keep these skilled people for them to trickle down the information and knowledge that they know from a top down basis as well.
Yeah,
Because
the
we do want to
amount of
foster
knowledge
we do want to
that we
foster
lose.
grassroots, but from a top down knowledge that
Yeah.
still stays within our borders as well. I think would be phenomenal.
And that on the job training, the mentorship, the coaching, you know, the knowledge sharing is probably more key than formal qualifications, because it's in real life, it's in the culture, it's in the topic of the business. So many people are retiring with this wealth of knowledge, and we haven't downloaded it into the graduates and the less experienced people.
I'm glad you mentioned that because I feel strongly about that one, especially when you look at youth and graduates, right? Because there's this expectation that you should have experience, but at the same time, you have people who have experience that can be matched with the capability, and you sort of create a pipeline that will accelerate, right, the skill set in the next generation. And to be honest, these are some of the projects that we have at Imizizi. But it's difficult for everybody to see the bigger picture, because at the end of the day, there's this investment that we are expecting corporates to make, right, in young people, but they almost feel like you'll be dragging behind the team. There's investment in terms of time that is required, that is going to affect their projects. There will be slow productivity in their projects. So it's almost like we refuse to have that future focused element. And for me, it's quite scary because I read a report. It's called the Future of Jobs report. I'm sure you know about it. Last year's report said that in the next 10 years, there will be about 23% churn. 23% churn, right? As an introduction, because IT is growing very fast. And if we are not doing a lot in upskilling, right? And also the World Economic Forum also produced a report where they were speaking about jobs that are not going to be filled, and it can translate to trillions of dollars in lost revenue globally, right? So this is a global issue, and South Africa can catch the bandwagon, right, and be industry leaders where we can, because we've got that rand advantage, right, to the dollar, to the euro, etc. But we are just not doing enough to position ourselves for the global market even. We are focused, you mentioned earlier that 90,000 jobs, right, being outsourced elsewhere, right? But we can position ourselves to actually be start, exporting our skills, right? Get money, bring the dollars in, right? But there's almost that friction between the current situation and the current problem that you're trying to solve for and the future focus, right?
And it's that soft element, isn't it? Because companies are investing billions in their machinery, you know, and the maintenance of their plants and their factories. But the talent, the people that make the company, there's no immediate vision of a return of investment. There's no formula. It's the unknown. It's scary. But we all know that it's more valuable than the machines.
Of course.
Exactly.
But we can't quantify it.
Of course.
And so it doesn't happen. We run.
Yeah. And I think we're running out of time. We need to wrap up, but I'll give each one of you just to share, because we speak about the challenges, we speak about our opinion, we speak about the government, what government is doing, corporates, what corporates doing. Just for you to share from your heart, what are some of the things you strongly feel we should be doing as a country, whether you're speaking to the person sitting at home right? Looking at tapping into that market and fulfilling that gap, or you are speaking to a hiring manager, right, who's not giving that young person a chance. What are some of the things that you can say as last words?
So, what I would say is we need greater accessibility to opportunity that is made viewable for everyone as well. And with regards to collaboration between the private sector and the government, thankfully, like I'm fortunate that I can see it firsthand at the BMW IT Hub, is that we have a partnership with government as well, where we do collaborations with universities and schools where we bring in graduates, we take them in on internships, we teach them about our way, and then hopefully we can get them placed and they can provide their skills to a global market. Because the ZA IT Hub, we provide solutions to a global market. And if we can keep that pipeline coming in from the education facilities, through the collaboration with government, private sector, working equally for the benefit of not just ourselves, but for the benefit of these people.
Awesome, awesome. Mr. Chris, if you can share, just in terms of, the mindset that especially leaders of organizations that they need to start adopting in order to address this, because I think one person at a time, right? One organization at a time. What are some of those solutions that you think they should be considering?
The one thing which I always say is that thinking well ahead is a very difficult thing for many of us.
Yeah.
We cannot conceptualize what it will look like to be able to confidently drive that as a strategy. So with that background, I think organizations need to begin to reverse engineer what they've been doing as the old way. In that, start to see something which is different or which can be done differently.
Yeah.
And begin to capacitate the organizations. I'm saying they because I'm an entrepreneur, in a manner which looks at what are the new and upcoming industries, or what can we mine in the very industries or places where we are at to do better in creating capacity and employment.
Yeah.
We cannot make a difference unless we do something different.
Different. That's right.
It is very foundational from where I sit. South Africa, as you said, has got a huge advantage in terms of the cost of employment, which we can make. We can export these skills quite cheaply, well favorable. So there is those advantages which we have. And I guess probably there has to be a better marketing in terms of what is that which is really in demand for the youth to begin to familiarize themselves, to align, and sometimes to take away the stigma which is set the youth seem to have, that certain tech skills or certain hand skills are not smart enough, yet are fundamental.
Yeah.
So that will probably make a difference.
That's right.
Yeah, I think, okay, I'll go from the unemployed standpoint, the unemployed. I think like a lot of the South African culture, we look up to Europe, we look up to America. We sometimes feel inferior. And I don't think that it's justified. We've got an incredible country, we've got incredible people, we've got the advantage of diversity, we've got this amazing survival skill as a country. We can come back from very difficult situations. So it's, for the people looking for work, open your mind. Yeah. Don't think like your parents thought or your grandparents thought or society told you to think. Don't be afraid to dream. Yeah. Because if you have a dream, you've got a compass. And then also act. Put your foot in the pond, because that's the hardest part. If you just start, the journey will begin. You may not know where you're going, but just do something. And read, be curious, just keep learning and growing. And it will happen. It's the attitude, it's the mindset. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. And I think I just would like to mention as well that from an Imizizi perspective, this topic specifically is very close to our hearts. And we will be running a lot of campaigns, right, related to this topic. We will be partnering with people, with organizations to address some of this, because it all has to start somewhere, right, at the end of the day. So if you are out there and this topic is something that's impacting you, please keep a close eye on our social media platforms. And also, if you are a graduate, so if you are at that entry level, do send us your CV, graduates at imizizi.co.za. And also, we will be partnering with mentors, right, within the IT space specifically. Chris mentioned earlier that, there isn't clarity as to there's demand in IT, but what does it look like and where is it exactly? So we'll be partnering with people who can walk that journey with, specific individuals to just help them on their career path, because we are firm believers that we don't have to solve everything, right, for the country, but one person at a time. Again, there's a lot more that we can achieve. So also, if you would like to be a mentor, please do send us an email, mentors@imizizi.co.za. Thank you so much, everybody. It's been such an interesting conversation, and thank you so much for our guests as well for your contribution. I'm sure people out there have learned a lot from all of you. And until we meet again, thank you.